first acknowledge all our participants all over the country, from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. They are representatives of various higher education institutions, both public and private. We also have participants of this webinar from Department of Science and Technology, from DepEd, from USAID Stride. So we have about 60 participants joining us this afternoon.
Yes, okay, good afternoon. I'm going to share my screen. I have
yes.
10 slides here. So while waiting for Chairman De Vera, so I think it's better to have some idea about the situation in the Philippines. Okay, so yeah, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
So to give you a brief background about what's going on regarding the COVID-19 epidemic here in our country. So around February, March, we know that we had a problem regarding the outbreak of COVID-19 here in our country. And because of that, our government imposed a community quarantine to different places, specifically in Luzon. And during that time, if you can look at this lower graph, we have here the reproductive number R. Reproductive number R is somehow a measure about the contagiousness of the disease. And this is actually the average number of people that a certain primary case can directly infect in a susceptible population. So before the R for the whole Philippines, actually this is mainly from Metro Manila because everything seems like started in Manila. It's around in this graph, it's around 3 to 6. It's actually very high. Although in some situation, there are estimates that the reproductive number is around 2.5. So as you can see with this curve here, R, and we are tracking this every day because of the enhanced community quarantine in our country, the R is going down. And here I use the symptom onset date to minimize the error because of reporting delays. So we are using these when the patients had symptoms. But if we're going to look at the trend regarding if we're going to use the reporting date, almost the same trend is going to be like this. And with regards to the doubling time, the cumulative number of cases in our country, the doubling time is actually having good signs. Now it's around 65 days. Okay, but this doesn't mean that the people, the Filipino people and the different communities should be complacent, because the idea of ECQ is not really, well, we want the disease to be eliminated, but the idea of ECQ is really just to delay the peak and our country to be prepared for the health, to have enough healthcare support for the severe and critical cases. So that's the situation. And I think it's better to look into this graph because we're talking with regards to education. And as we can see that in our models, and actually this is based on the paper by Alex Cook from National University of Singapore, which we are collaborating with. Here we can see that different age groups interact with different age groups based on this distribution. So as we can see here, the age 15 to 20, actually from age 5 to around age 25, they are the ones who are interacting mostly with other age groups. But if we're going to look at those age groups interacting with the vulnerable age class, here we use 65 and up. We can see these kids here up to age 15. These are the age groups that interacts with mostly with the vulnerable age groups. So this is very important because this gives us some idea what age groups can be um, somehow considered in flattening the curve. And mostly for the graduate students, I think they are probably around age 25, 40. So it's mostly lower interaction compared to the teenagers, but still this group still has some interactions with other age groups. Okay. And this is, I think, one of the things that we need to consider regarding the epidemiological background of the COVID-19 disease. The viral shedding happens even before having symptoms. So usually the virus replicates in the nasal cavity, in the throat, before going to the lungs. And because of this, even a symptomatic person can have symptoms, he or she already have probably infected many people already. So the peak of the viral shedding happens before the symptoms. Okay, so this is very important because we need to consider these dynamics when we are going to decide on policies regarding physical interaction among people.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So,
Yes, po.
yeah. Jomar, do you still have some slides to present? Because we can already ask the reaction of our panel members about the slides that you have given us. Panel members, well, of course, the first one is the implication of all of this data and information on a specific age group of student, and that is the graduate students. And you have already mentioned that specific age group. And of course, alam naman natin na in all universities, for instance, in UP and other SUCs in Ateneo, lockdown naman talaga, naka-lockdown na. And the question is whether graduate education courses can still push through. Yeah. Okay. So,
Do you have any questions?
to our panel members, Dr. Vergara, Dr. Penaso?
Yes, may I ask?
Yes.
Can I? Yes, the
Yes,
projected
please.
daily social, yes, the projected daily social contact is in the screen. May I ask what is the assumption in doing this? Are you assuming that there is a COVID positive 19 in the community? I'm sorry, I'm not a mathematician. That's why I am asking this. And this is relating to the safety of our students later on. In my assumption, kung walang COVID-19 in the population, then we will not get that projection. Am I correct, sir?
Okay. Hi, Dr. Agrupis. We're from the same university. She's a Woka University.
Okay.
Yeah. Here, actually, this slide here does not include yet COVID-19. This is just the daily interaction among people. And I just aggregated the interactions in this one slide, but actually in the study, Alex Cook studied the interaction inside the home, in schools, and in workplace, and in all other places. And then just coming from this interaction, we're going to input this in our epidemiological model. This is just purely about interaction. So if there's no COVID-19, this interaction still probably, there is still interaction like this, but probably no COVID-19 transmission that will happen.
May I ask a question?
Yes,
Yeah.
please. Yes, yes.
The interactions here are specific to the Philippines?
Yes po. Okay, just to give you a background, actually there's no social contact survey being done yet for the Philippines. Okay, that's one. There's no experimental thing like that been done. But what Alex Cook did is they projected the interaction among people based on a certain small sample and then compared it to 152 countries. Because the current survey that they have is based on Europe. They call it Polymod. But they projected the Philippine case based on that. Yeah, so I need to say that this is mainly also because of projections, not a real experiment.
Yeah, that's interesting kasi, I mean, just for interest, no? Kasi you could imagine in the Philippine setting, it might be very different considering our slum areas and so on, diba? So, parang it's different from Europe, definitely, diba? The interactions of people in Europe is different from the interactions of people in the Philippines or in India. And
Okay.
Yes, po.
Yeah. Okay, so we are acknowledging first, Jomar, we have Chairman De Vera with us. Yes, Jomar, please tell your response to the question of JP.
Okay na po, sir. Okay na, Sir JP, right?
Yes. Do you have other questions from the panel about the presentation of Jomar? Dr. Penaso, before we call
I'm just
Chairman
asking
Vera.
whether the projection is based on the actual demographics in the Philippines, because the distribution of age groups would really be different here in the Philippines and in other countries. Like, for example, in Japan and other Western countries, the population of the old age, the aging population is higher than in the Philippines. The Philippines is more of reverse. So I am just asking whether that consideration of demographic distribution is considered.
Yes, po. I have actually more slides, but I think it's okay not to show. We had our projections based on actual age distribution in the Philippines, also including the population density of each barangay level. So we have that.
Okay.
Yeah, but I wasn't able to show the details of the graph. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jomar, because your presentation will greatly inform us on whether we...
Can you stop?
Yeah, so Penaso, do you still have issues to ask about
The model,
Jomar's
no issue.
presentation? Yes. Glenn?
No more. Wala na. Okay na.
Glenn? Okay, Glenn. Do you still have a question on the presentation of Jomar? While
yes, it's just that I'm have some reservations if that model is used, and knowing that the culture that we have is very much different from comparing with the European countries. I don't know whether the accuracy of the decision that will be made based on that. But just the same, it's a good model.
Yeah. To answer that, sorry, I wasn't able to show all of my slides. That's just that's actually just a starting point actually for the discussion. We actually included the actual age distribution among the different province in the Philippines and the population density of each barangay level. And this is we just use that social contact matrix because we don't have yet in the Philippines, just to compare that what would happen if we have this age group in, let's say, in Manila. What will be the possible impact in our SEIR modeling, epidemiological modeling. I wasn't able to show all the slides. That's why.
Thank you, Jomar. Tama ba yung pagkaintindi ko na yung mga asymptomatic, mas marami yung nai-infect nila, di ba? Tama ba yan?
Actually, this is the dynamics, no? There are studies that the asymptomatics are less infectious than the symptomatic. Actually, the biology of that, because the symptomatic has a more viral load than the asymptomatics. So one person, symptomatic, can infect, asymptomatic person can infect less than symptomatic. But there are studies that the asymptomatics, in terms of population size, they are more than the symptomatic. So in terms of driving the transmission among the communities, asymptomatic really has those class in the asymptomatics really they have effect in the transmission dynamics. Actually, that's the case.
The reason I ask is I would like to relate it to the mass testing that is being talked about now. So how important it is to really have enough testing so that the asymptomatic ones will be tested as well.
Yeah, actually, that's actually a difficult question, because if it also depends on the definition of mass testing. If we're just going to define mass testing targeting those symptomatic, yeah, we're going to miss the asymptomatics. But if we're going to include the asymptomatics in the picture, we cannot just randomize everyone, because the PCR test kits are very expensive. But we have antibody tests, but you know, the specificity and the accuracy are not that high. So I think what they're doing now is a targeted mass testing, in the sense that symptomatic, and if you have some background, even if you're asymptomatic, if you have contact with someone, then you can be tested. But yeah, this is actually a difficult question to answer because of the capacity of our testing centers.
Okay, so
Thank you, Jomar. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Jomar. Hello, are you still there? Okay, colleagues, we're having some technical issues here. So Jomar, you're still there. Dr. Tulin? Dr. Tulin.
Yes, po.
Okay, so yes.
Jomar.
Do we still have, yeah, Jomar. May iba pa ho kayong tanong kay Jomar, clarifying on the data that we have.
Meron na
He has shown.
I can. Ay, sige po.
Can you hear me?
Okay po.
Okay. Kasi based doon sa, in one of your figures presented, I think it was on the first few slides, sinabi mo kasi we are doing the ECQ just to delay the peak of virus infection, di ba? Tama?
Yes po. Mm-hmm.
So, sa ganung are we saying that given the dynamics of the infection in a certain locality, malaman ba talaga natin what will be the peak?
Okay, I can actually show some slides. This is actually some of the slides that I wasn't able to show, if it's okay. Okay, just to give you a brief idea. Okay, so here actually, this is one of the simulations that we did. Just one scenario, because there could be many scenarios. So previously, we are here, then it should be going up like this exponentially, but because of the ECQ, we are able to suppress it. So it's like really hammering the curve down, but there could be many scenarios after. So actually the question here is what's the effect of ECQ, but what would be our post-ECQ strategies? Because everything will depend on our post-ECQ strategies. If we just go back to our epidemic-friendly practices, and we know in NCR there are still many active cases, it could shoot up like this again, like the yellow one. But if we continue our ECQ, we can have the blue one here. But we know this is very hurtful for the economy, so we need to find the balance between the two. So there are many scenarios in between. So every time we do intervention, the peak might be delayed in a later date. But sometimes if we go back again to our epidemic-friendly practices, even if we're flattening it like this, it can still shoot up again. So this actually needs fighting COVID needs continuous monitoring, continuous contact tracing, continuous interventions. So that's actually one of the dynamics of this disease.
Yeah, but what we're saying here is a continued community quarantine will actually tell us to delay, di ba? So
yes,
if we stop the quarantine at this point, for example, in your graph, most likely what you're saying in the prediction is you will have again another rise in the infection, right?
It's possible po. Mm-hmm.
Is this point the critical? If we have to decide, is this really important? is this model really important if we have to decide what to do next after the community quarantine extension?
We can use this model to inform us what will be the effective strategies, because somehow, of course, there are errors, but somehow we can give numbers. Let's say if you do testing, we know how many people might be isolated. So in that case, we can see how the peak will be reduced. If we do this kind of protection, if we do this and this strategy, we know how the reproductive number will be lowered, so we know what would be the possible scenario. So I think from there, the models can provide some projections on about that various scenarios, possible scenarios.
Do you have another predictive model that will tell us if you do this intervention, if you do this strategy, this will happen to the curve, so on and so forth? Because it seems that these are only the other yellows, the other colors in the graph are the detected cases, right?
Yes, po. Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, in our modeling reports to the different policy makers, we give different scenarios to them. In this presentation, I just chose this kind of scenario just to show you an illustrative picture of what would happen after. Yeah, but we definitely have.
Okay. Halimbawa, Jomar, when we do mass testing, what will happen to the yellow line?
Yeah, if we do mass testing, if we isolate, that could help in isolating people. And if we isolate the infectious people, the curve might be reduced. It can be reduced. But of course, it also depends on the testing rate, testing capacity of our testing centers. Yeah, but definitely it can be, that testing might really have a positive effect on reducing the peak.
Okay. Sige. Thank you. Thank you, Dom.
Okay. Thank you, Jomar, because that's important on the implications of the things that you're showing us. So now we have Chairman Vera of the Commission on Higher Education. Sir, good afternoon, sir.
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So,
sorry, I couldn't get.
This is the webinar on graduate education, the impact of COVID-19. As we all know, sir, graduate students are of different type of students. What we've been hearing is all about policies and guidelines about undergraduate students, and none so far about graduate students. And to give us some picture of the initiatives of Chair. Sir, okay na po kayo?
I'm good.
Okay po kayo?
All right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we are joined by many participants from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, including the SUC presidents. So we have the deans of Ateneo and De La Salle University. Yes, sir. You have the floor, sir.
Hi. Okay. Thank you. I logged in late. I was having some technical problems. I asked my staff, Ella, to run my PowerPoint. I prepared a short PowerPoint to just highlight some of the ideas or some of the things that I wanted to bring up in the webinar. So, okay. Yeah, can you run it, please? Thank you, Ella. So basically, I tried to put together some ideas on how graduate education would look like in the post-COVID-19 period. It's difficult to structure what post-COVID-19 means because until now, the data on the ground is not very complete or reliable, and therefore in some of the things I'm mentioning, it covers both immediately lifting the ECQ as a post-COVID period, as well as post-COVID period that will run all the way to the rest of the year, including the reopening of classes in August. No? So next slide, please. So basically, in terms of background and assumptions, The assumptions is that COVID-19 will linger until we develop herd immunity or deploy vaccines. But while we wait for the vaccine, we clearly need to resume operations to keep institutional viability and produce the needed human resource for the country. I am against simply extending the cancellation of classes, because that will affect essentially the institutional viability, particularly of private universities, and also hold back the production of needed human resource. The problem, of course, is that there is high level of uncertainty, and lack of data makes it very difficult to formulate a calibrated response on the part of higher education institutions. But I have always argued that HEIs are centers of knowledge creation and innovation, and should treat the crisis as an opportunity for change. So we should not be overwhelmed by the crisis, but rather treat it as an opportunity where we can fundamentally rethink and fundamentally restructure the way we run graduate education. Next slide, please. So there are 5 areas that I wanted to put on the table for discussions as we move forward. One is knowing our graduate students. The second is leveraging technology. Third is sharing of resources. Fourth is adjusting policies for our graduate students. And fifth, formulating supportive policies for our faculty. These 5 areas are not meant to be all the areas that will be taken up, but I thought these are the areas that we can start discussions on. So first, in terms of knowing our graduate students, in my discussions with the presidents of state universities and colleges and also private universities, I think the major challenge for all universities, both for the undergraduate but equally important for the graduate school, is to be able to assess who are our students in terms of connectivity, in terms of the device that they're using, in terms of their location, and in terms of the impact of the COVID-19 for them. Those that are negatively impacted by COVID-19 immediately between now and the next 2 to 3 months will have to be treated differently as graduate students. The best situation, of course, is our graduate students who are post-paid, have a laptop at home with minimal adverse impact. So this is the best situated graduate student. I must add, of course, that aside from assessing our graduate students, we must seriously undertake the same exercise for our faculty in the graduate program. Next, please. The second one is, how do we leverage technology? Essentially, the question is, how do we connect with each other? Because we have to, in the graduate school or in the graduate program, significantly shift the use of video conferencing for thesis and dissertation defense, for consultation meetings and lectures, among other things. I don't know the level at which universities are doing it now. There's wide variance across public and private and across certain types of universities. But we have to seriously go into this. Second, using email and messaging to social media. Third is delivery of printed materials through USB, through CD, via courier or school service. And the fourth is access to free service from Google, G Suite for education to ensure emails are official and avoid phishing. Next, please. Continuing with leveraging technology, in the graduate school, we have to develop the capability to access resources remotely. And this includes remote access to e-learning materials, including journals and ebooks, links to open education resources, and IT support for access to open source or licensed software, including free trial versions. Next, please. And finally, we should seriously, in the graduate program, be able to protect data and information. And that means information security protocol for transfer of data and clear reporting protocol on breach of personal information in violation of Republic Act 10173. Next, please. The third one, or the third area or challenge that I'd like to put on the table is how do we share and pool resources across institutions? This is going to be a very challenging exercise because in the Philippines, we have basically developed silos of institutions. I have always said in my public pronouncements that one of my frustrations in the commission is that state universities and colleges don't like working with each other. They are rather suspicious of each other. And it is worse when you talk about how public universities work with private universities. This is because in the Philippines, universities look at each other as competitors. They look at each other as institutions that will try to poach or try to get their students to transfer to other universities. That is a mindset that is going to be very difficult to change, but we have to start doing it. When I say sharing and pooling of resources across institutions, I talk about pooling of students in similar subjects, with schools most prepared in a particular subject providing instruction to students with access. Second, the pooling of expertise to reorient proposals and research to address, for example, pandemic needs, because this is going to be a continuing research priority or challenge in the following months. And third, in terms of sharing, of crafting of short courses to quickly respond to specific needs. Next, please. And then next is we have to be able to draft and implement compassionate policies to our students, including deferred grade and extended deadline for publications without affecting academic standards or academic standing in the programs for those who won't be able to use the laboratory or do fieldwork, for example. If the COVID-19 lingers, in terms of how this will affect frontliners and the family of victims of COVID-19. Second, we need to be able to ensure that there is provision of maintenance of critical research infrastructure. And this includes equipment, laboratories, care for plants, and culture used for research to facilitate resumption of research work. Next, please. We also need, as those running graduate programs, as far as practicable, continuing provisions for allowances and compensation for graduate or research assistants and scholars on study leave without pay, assuming that in certain areas of the country, the COVID pandemic will continue to linger in the next couple of months. We need to provide counseling and mental health intervention upon the resumption of classes, extension in the maximum residency rule for students, and of course, virtual office for students with urgent needs. Next, please. We need to support the faculty. Consideration especially for lecturers and faculty who are frontliners, victims, and those without access to the internet, particularly if the pandemic takes longer to control. If the pandemic is controlled earlier or the vaccine is found earlier, then many of these challenges will not be there anymore. Now, the next one is the most challenging one as far as CHED is concerned, because we are launching a massive program for blended or flexible learning. we should be able to train our faculty for online or blended delivery of instructions, including designation of instructional designers to support them. There is an upside and a downside as far as graduate programs is concerned. It is my position that training the faculty for flexible or blended learning will be most challenging in the undergraduate level. In the graduate program, because of the structure and design of delivery right now, I think it will be easier to go into blended learning, particularly because some public and private universities are already doing blended learning in their graduate school. But there are still a lot of public and private universities that will encounter problems, and the challenge is how do we train their faculty. Next is issuance of devices, if available and necessary, or provision of loan programs to get reliable internet connection for our faculty. Next, please. So finally, over the long term, we must take serious attention or consideration on the need to upgrade institutional infrastructure to enable the school to offer connectivity and access to content using available technology. The assumption here, of course, is that the quarantine has been lifted in most parts of the country, and students can start going back to the school, and therefore the locus of learning will continue to be the university, and therefore we have to invest in institutional infrastructure. Next is continuing education for professors and lecturers on offering via blended or distance mode through the creation of dedicated support staff, with particular emphasis on the creation of dedicated and support staff. And finally, crafting of plans with regular dry run with students, even during normal times, to ensure smooth transition should operations go online, because that is what we're targeting on the long run, that we will be able to do flexible learning, but really strengthen capacity of universities to do online learning. Thank you very much. That is my presentation, and I hope I kept within the time, and I'd be interested to get the comments of the other participants in the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So you presented exhaustively, I think, all the issues that we've been confronting as far as graduate education offering is concerned among higher education institutions, sir. You have a very comprehensive, I would say, post-COVID plans for universities and colleges to consider. Before I ask the panel members about their thoughts or their reaction, sir, I think there could be differential response in terms of how would graduate schools be giving their response on these post-COVID scenarios. In terms of the resources, there would be differential access to resources. We have the rich universities, whereas not so rich universities. So how do you think this would be leveled out, sir?
I think the biggest challenge right now is because while the pandemic is still going on the one hand, there is pressure to act decisively and move fast. On the other hand, the data for decision-making is not available, or is not complete, or not reliable. So I think on the part of the Commission, and I think on the part of all the university presidents, you have to think differently in these times of crisis. You need to strategize and do decision-making, out-of-the-box decision-making, being able to make decisions with limited data. Because if we require for decision-making under normal times, complete, reliable, verifiable data, we won't be able to get to that point of getting decisions. That's why we have to be innovative in the way we make our decisions. So the strategy of the commission is to try to talk regularly with the university presidents themselves, both public and private. Because otherwise, if the commission will send out a form to get data and inventory all of this, we won't be able to make decisions because it takes very long to get reliable data. So the substitute, as far as my strategy is concerned, is to constantly talk to the presidents. And the presidents should be able to get data from their universities, and then we just make comparisons. The other strategy is we become flexible and nimble in the policy. So if you notice, the advisories that the commission issues are quite broad and quite expansive. It allows universities to decide on their own, to adjust on their own. At this point, the commission cannot be very prescriptive. You've got to allow the universities significant flexibility to make decisions. And if you notice in CHED advisories 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, it came out very fast. In fact, I was writing it while the IATF meeting was going on and while Malacanang was there. But then in advisory number 6, I asked the state university presidents to form technical working groups. And they are the ones who crafted the policy because they know better. I cannot substitute my decision-making to their decision-making because they have more reliable data. So it was the university presidents, both public and private, who formulated the language, adopted it through the commission and bank, and I put it in the advisory. So those are some of the nimble and innovative strategies that we are using during this period of pandemic. Because you want to make decisions based on verifiable data, but the verifiable data is often incomplete or missing. So you've got to balance this.
Yeah, I wish I can react to all the points that you have raised, Mr. Chair. Fortunately, we have here the SUC's presidents and the deans and the vice presidents. So may we hear from our panel of reactors from Mindanao. Let's first hear from Dr. Penaso of Caraga State University. What innovations, for instance, have you made to respond to this COVID-19, particularly in offering graduate education? The chair mentioned about we have to innovate, we have to strategize. President Penaso, are you around? Dr. Penaso? Dr. Penaso or Dr. Penaso or Dr. Tulin?
Okay, so yeah, this time.
Yes, please. Yeah.
So what are some of the innovation that we're doing here at Caraga State University?
In terms of graduate education.
Yeah, as far as graduate education is concerned, at least the post-COVID, especially this summer, where we will be offering graduate programs. No? And we will surely be following the blended learning format, both online and offline, asynchronous and synchronous modalities. And we have already planned out the online enrollment. We actually have, it's good that we have just tested it last semester, so it's really ready. The module will be incorporated into our enrollment system so that they can enroll even in their homes. And the kind of arrangement that we'll be doing is we really minimize the face-to-face and maybe zero face-to-face. So they will just get instruction from their concerned professor through Moodle or Google Classrooms. And yeah, they will do it in the way the particular course is formatted and agreed upon by the professor and the students. So we will pursue online, blended learning for summer. We will pilot test it in summer. So no more face-to-face, 100% face-to-face for summer, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
They will just
Yeah.
get instruction from their
Okay.
professor.
Yeah, I think the chair has pointed out about the characteristics of higher education. I think he mentioned about the higher education environment is so competitive, but this time around, I think he's posing a challenge that at least this time we should be collaborative. We should cooperate. So, for example, from our private universities here represented, Dr. Vergara, what do you think some of these strategies that we can lend, for instance, to our state universities? Dr. Vergara, John Paul.
Yeah. So you're specifically mentioning the matter of collaboration across universities.
Yes.
And I think that's a very good idea. What's important, I assume, is for us to be able to have the right enablers, maybe even incentives with respect to making universities come together. We have like some successes in the past. So when we have consortia, they often work, but this always comes with a kind of directive or an enabling mechanism, often coming with funding. Because if you contract the universities and say, do this, and then here are the mechanisms to do that, and here are the workarounds for some of the difficulties, we will work on it. Tama naman yung sinabi ni Chairman De Vera na parang in a sense there is, lalo na during these times, there's a sense to prioritize our own operations, right? But there's always a sense of mission that comes with these different universities, including ours. And I'm sure we will take to the task if we are able to get to that right condition.
Yeah, thank you, JP. Dr. De Vera mentioned about this time we should be compassionate to our students. I think he pointed out yung malasakit. No, dito hindi na pwede yung sink, swim strategy for our students. What can you say about that?
That's still me?
Yes, JP.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So actually, that's one of the things that that led us to the decision that Ateneo made quite recently, right? So there were so many factors that led to the decision that Ateneo made. For the undergrad population, you know what happened. For graduate, it was particularly more challenging because we have different conditions. But what the underlying principles were, as you mentioned, compassion, leniency, flexibility. That's what kicked in. And that's the reason why we came up with ways to enable students to still continue with their programs while keeping with the spirit of our contract with them. So for graduate, iba yung kwento eh. Many of them are part-time, many of them are paying their way. You can't do this, everybody gets a P thing, right? So and that's it. No, so you have to still talk about requirements and talk about what will happen next and talk about what are the conditions while understanding the flexibilities and being compassionate with the conditions of these very trying times.
Yeah. We have Dr. Shirley. Dr. Shirley Agrupis is the president of Mariano Marcos State University. In terms of your support to faculty members of graduate school, in this era, in this time of COVID pandemic, when faculty members are flat-footed in terms of the response, do we have a set of support to our faculty members? Can we provide them the skills now?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone, and to our fellow reactors, and of course to our chair of always available for this kind of webinar. Good afternoon to everyone. Yes, regarding the support system, Let me start my reaction by going back to the presentation of Dr. De Vera, our chair, regarding the how we move forward. Because in the past webinars that we have been attending, we already have presented the different challenges, the impacts, excuse me, and the possible strategies that we will be adopting. But I was captivated by the slide of our chair regarding the items that we need to consider in moving forward. As leaders in the academic institution, we should really be the bastion of a calm and measured approach to crisis management, while remaining decisive and effective without dismissing credible health risks of pandemic. At times like this, we really need to be data-driven. And I like to react first on the items that our chair has presented us, knowing our graduate students, leveraging technology, sharing of resources, adjusted policies of our students, and supportive policies for our faculty. Indeed, these are four major or five major considerations in designing our innovative strategies in order to address the challenges posed by COVID-19. So moving forward, since I understand that this is a forum where we share experiences and learn from one another, if I may be allowed to show you innovations of MMSU in order to address partly, if not whole, the challenge posted by our chair. Sir Host, am I allowed to show you? Because from there I can give or define what are our ideas in addressing these challenges. Am I allowed?
If you can show us briefly, Madam President.
Yes.
Yes.
No. Go for, wag na yan. Yung because as of at MMSU, our basis in giving in defining our policies is really coming from the ground, as our chair has emphasized that we really need consultation and really see what are the pulses from the ground. So moving forward at MMSU, we really evaluated the geographical distribution of our students. And let me focus on our graduate school. For the, come on, can you show us? Just briefly. So knowing our students, we have already mapped the origins, the geographical distribution of our students. And it is shown that our students, 92% are coming from Ilocos Norte. Now, out of these students in our graduate school, we have only 634, and the percentage, the majority of them are coming from Ilocos Norte. Now, the reason why we are doing this is for us to really evaluate, to give us a guide what kind of modality that we should give to our graduate students. These students are learned students, and they have different level. They have already a developed competency to undergo online or other flexible or blended learning. And it is also very important for us to know kung saan sila galing. Sa undergraduate natin, they have well-defined direction, be as electronics, engineering, and medicine. But in graduate school, it is really, for me, it is really very important kung saan sila galing. They come from industry, DepEd, HEI, LGU, others. These are very important factor before na mag-decide tayo ng modality na ibibigay natin sa kanila, because they have certain level of competency that they want to learn from our school. So on the ground, on the screen, we see kung saan galing ang ating graduate students. Next slide. And then, are they ready? We also get their pulse if they are ready to report for the opening of classes from May or forward. So we have the data. Next slide. So I want to go to the leveraging the technology. Yun ang sinabi kanina ni Chair. And so we must have a data. What are the available gadgets that enable our graduate student to participate in any other modality under the new normal. So this data is really very important. And if we have this data, alam na natin kung ano. And then moving forward, malaman din natin kung ano yung connectivity nila in the area. Because in the different online or flexible modality, may mga online video streaming when you teach classes, defending of their thesis by video conferencing, and so on and so forth. So these data are really very important. And then, slide. So ano yung, and it's also very important to learn from our graduate students because I repeat, meron silang different level of competencies in undergoing this. And hindi tulad ng undergraduate natin na pwede natin silang i-grade kung ano yung natapos nila. Halimbawa, midterm natapos nila plus other additional assignment, pwede na sila. Sa mga graduate student natin, hindi eh. Meron silang certain level of competency and skill na kailangan nilang pag-aralan for them to be more competitive or capable sa pagbalik nila sa mga trabaho nila. There are also other graduate students, those especially coming from LGU, na may certain topic na gusto nilang tingnan under graduate studies. So we can only help them kung titingnan natin kung ano yung ability ng kanilang internet connectivity na pwede silang mag-participate. Are they capable of what's video streaming and so on and so forth? Next slide. So yan po yung aming initiative sa university. So all of these are pulled together so that we can come up with a just and data-driven policies. Yun yung ginagawa namin because I repeat, yes.
Madam President, so yung inyong policies guided by this survey that you conducted, hindi pa ho na-implement, hindi pa ho nakakandak, hindi pa ho na-implement yung response niyo.
That's the reason why among all other SUC, the chair could vote for that. Ako yung naglalaban. No, with or without extension. Ready na kami. Meron na kaming policy.
Okay, so yeah. Thank you very much, Madam President, for those innovations that you have undertaken. Sir Popoy, may isang point dito about the thing that you have mentioned about leveraging technology, about the thrust towards direction towards blended learning online. Kasi may mga fields, there are fields or specializations that online or blended learning may not work, for instance. So isang malaking challenge ito, sir. So how will you react to this, sir?
Well, it depends on the time frame that we're talking about. August is still a long way off.
Okay.
And there is potential in many areas of the country to address the COVID pandemic earlier than that. There are even COVID-free provinces.
Yes, okay, yeah, that's right, yeah.
So I think one of the key things that we should not do is to make policy decisions for the whole country using Metro Manila only as the basis of our decisions. In fact, that is the reason why I have reacted strongly to the statement of Dr. Mahar Lagmay saying classes should be stopped until December. I said, what is the empirical basis for that? Because when we make decisions at the national level, the decisions, number one, must be evidence-based. It must be geographically differentiated. Because there are areas in the country that are COVID-free and there are areas in the country where COVID is controlled. So it is very possible that by August, by September, in these areas, they may be able to restrictions faster than the others. So the universities in those areas will have to craft policies different from the universities in Metro Manila. Because the hotspot is Metro Manila, Calabarzon, Central Luzon, and Cebu and Davao. Now, those areas where COVID is still difficult to control, They are more challenged, of course. Mas mahirap. Pero in other areas, it might be easier. Number two, what if immunization is produced faster? We're saying that it will be 1.5 years, but I just read on the news that some companies are predicting that they could produce the vaccine in 9 months. So the quote-unquote normalization of the new normal will be different across geographic areas. So I would like to ask our presidents that when you craft policies, it must always be evidence-based and determined by the conditions in your areas. That's why the Commission will never issue a one size fits all policy, because the differentiation is so different. My number 2 point is, I think the challenge of flexible learning will be more difficult in the undergrad. In the graduate school, because of the way, I don't know how the graduate school works in other universities, but I have spent my whole professional career in the graduate program. I have been teaching graduate school in UP since 2002. The last time I taught an undergraduate class was about 2002. And even in the graduate programs that I teach, it is already structured so students can do activities outside the class. In short, I have been experimenting with blended learning all this time. Mas madali sa graduate school i-restructure yung curriculum. Mas madali maglagay ng alternative activities. The challenge is, there are degree programs where it is more difficult than others. So the question is, what do you do with those degree programs? And that was raised in our Zoom group chat by Professor Lit. And I agree, it's going to be challenging. But what is the answer? The experts in those disciplines must work together, because only the experts in those disciplinary fields would know better how to restructure graduate programs in those areas. If the universities still see themselves as silos and they don't want to cooperate with each other and the experts don't cooperate with each other, then the longer we will be able, the more difficult it is to surmount that problem. So ang sagot diyan, I don't know the answer because I'm not an expert in a lot of fields. It is the experts in those fields which I would like to listen to, because I don't know the answer, they probably know the answer better.
I think, sir, Dr. Lit, for instance, is saying that he's suggesting for support on workshops to enable faculty members to shift to online blended mode. I think that's what he's asking here, sir.
Yes, on the part of the Commission and Bank has already approved the launching of a major initiative on flexible learning. A technical working group has already produced a first draft of the project. They have presented it to me. I have put my comments. I think the first activity of the TWG is to contract experts who will do an inventory of the faculty resources of universities and an inventory of the students. So we have a starting point. And then we can already launch massive capacity building program for faculty members to start working on flexible learning, fully funded by the Commission. So we have realigned significant resources for this, and we have also adopted as a policy that the Commission will fund projects of consortium type arrangements for universities to work together. So that has been approved by the Commission 2 weeks ago.
That's good to note, Mr. Chair. I think isa yun sa malaking bagay na inaabangan ng ating mga faculty members. We have two chemists here, Dr. Tulin, the president of Visayas State University, and Dr. Alea, the dean of the College of Science of De La Salle University. And I'm sure ang isang point nila ay mahirap mag-conduct ng online blended learning kapag chemistry. How would you react to this, Dr. Tulin or Dr. Alea? Are you around? Dr. Tulin? Dr. Tulin or Dr. Alea?
Yes.
Yes.
First of all, I would like, yes, as a chemistry kasi is experiential. In other words, there are things that must be done face-to-face to be able to learn the techniques and so on and so forth. And I would just to show you the strategy of De La Salle University, if you don't mind, so the other university can hear about it. First, when classes were first suspended on March 9 by Mayor Isko Moreno, the LSU immediately switched into online mode. But lucky for us, the LSU has a learning management system already existing in place since 2 years ago. We call it Animo Space. So there are faculty members who are already well-trained and can really conduct online classes, pure online classes. Personally, I prefer blended learning, meaning partly online, but partly face-to-face. That's my personal preference. Now, in terms of support for faculty members, we have this office called ASSIST. It's academic support for instructional services and technology. So this is an office that conducts trainings regularly and answer questions regarding the use of Animo Space. So it will really help. But the main problem here is, of course, some of our faculty we're asking them to get out of their comfort zone. It means that we really need to convince them. It's a challenge for the HEI leaders to actually tell them it's now time to learn more. And there are so many things to learn. One is the tool that they need to use for online learning, the effective approach in different topics, and so on and so forth. But we're doing something about it. One of them is interconnectivity is a problem. So LaSalle will actually provide packet Wi-Fi to all students and faculty just to make sure that they are connected anywhere they like. Now, in the immediate future, the problem is lab work for graduate school, especially for chemistry. And starting the next term, we intend to start it on July 1. We are anticipating that face-to-face will still be a problem. But the period from now up to July 1 may be enough time for the faculty to prepare. So what we are considering is to have a first enrollment wherein we will only offer courses that can be done pure online if necessary. Preferably be blended, but it can be done pure online, just in case that we will not be allowed to go to the campus. Now, there will be a second enrollment, which we will now accommodate laboratory classes, just in case face-to-face will not be allowed. We are also considering modular type of courses. So instead of being present for 3 months in campus, it's modular type, meaning experiments one after the other, fully supervised by the teacher. So these are some of the things that we are doing at the LSU. But I would like to mention, I fully agree with Chair Rivera, that some universities are more equipped than others. So I would like, if you will permit me, to ask Chair, if it's possible, then since some of the universities are not that equipped yet, maybe SHED can endorse, for example, some students to actually enroll in some universities that are already equipped and then have it credited so that they will graduate as soon as possible time. If there will be some sort of endorsement or support, then it will be better, because there is this bias that online learning is not equal quality than face-to-face. So if SHED will not endorse it, nobody will believe that SHED is not endorsing it. So why will we enroll in online learning? So I think it will be better for, if you want to push for this online learning. Anyway, learner-centered education na tayo ngayon. What SHED Chair is mentioning about sa graduate school, it's learner-centered. Ibig sabihin, we are just facilitators anyway. So if SHED can endorse that, then that it will be better. Thank you, Sir Dong.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, sir.
Yes. Well, first, I think the presentation or the answer of LaSalle illustrates what I have always been saying, that there are universities who are doing a good job. That's why I have always reacted to this statement that you just stop online learning, because you're dragging the good ones down. Why will you stop the good providers from providing continuing education? Just because some people or some students are having a difficulty, then you dump down and you just make everybody suffer? I have always reacted to that. I said, universities are differently situated. So the key is for us to identify the universities that are already doing a good job and convince them to enter into arrangements with other universities, number one, to teach the other universities how to do it, to share the resources with the other universities, and to make learning portable across universities. I have always called for portability. For the past 3 years I've been in the commission, I've been talking about that. Nobody seems to be listening. You know, it's good that COVID happens because it forces everyone to rethink what they're doing. I have no problem moving credits across universities. The bigger challenge is, how do you make universities buy into the system? Because the universities see the others as competitors. They are trying to grab the tuition of those students. They want to own the students for the whole graduate program. I have no problem creating a crediting system across universities. But it's another matter selling it to the universities to wholeheartedly embrace the idea of portability across universities.
Quick point, Glenn. I think we have the consortium in the DOST, Science Consortium, where we agreed to have this arrangement of accreditation, where one university, the students can move to another university, you know, conduct their experiments. But I think we should really act on this, you know, especially in this post-COVID graduate education. Yeah.
I agree, Sir Dong.
Yeah. Kasi ang nangyari,
the good thing is it's already existing. So
existing na tayo. Ang problema lang, hindi tayo nag-uusap paano siya i-operationalize. Kasi as the Chair de Vera said, nandun pa rin yung competitive mindset, no, ng mga universities. And I hope even the state universities, Mariano, Marcos, Visayas State, I think you have your own consortium, the DOST, Science and Mathematics Education Consortium. I think you can also have this as a platform for portability and accreditation.
Sir Dong.
Yes, Glenn.
It's
please.
more doable now because before, if you want to cross-enroll, you will actually go there to the university.
Yes.
It's very difficult. But now it's online. You can already enroll and attend classes without actually going there, because going to one university will involve lots of funding.
I think Chair, please. Chair.
Yeah, I think the challenge is for the universities to discuss and agree among themselves that the strength of the good universities be maximized by the other universities. So you can do online or distance mode for the subjects in the graduate school, where there are some universities that are part of the consortium who are already doing a good job. So you don't have to do all of it yourself. They must share the resources. If La Salle is there for chemistry, in the graduate programs, the other universities should allow their students to enroll for that particular subject in chemistry in the La Salle University and credit it. Anyway, it is distance mode or it is mixed learning. They don't have to go physically to De La Salle to complete the whole subject. It can be created by modules, etc. So it's really a change in mindset that we need. It is for the presidents and the universities to embrace the idea of flexible learning and say, yes, we will do it. I think that is the challenge that I am posing to the university presidents. On the part of CHED, we will fully support it because this is an advocacy I have been pushing for a long time.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Before I call Dr. Tulin, ang gusto ko lang sabihin na, sir, kasi if we collaborate with other universities abroad, see their strengths, we forge partnership, then how much more? No, we see the strength of our own universities here in the Philippines. No, ang daming strength ng universities na nandito sa bansa, and then nakikipag-collaborate tayo sa mga universities abroad na would entail cost. Then this time around, let's have a second look sa ganitong klase ng collaboration. Yeah, Dr. Tulin.
I think all the university presidents have already known my position on this because, I have in all my policy speeches, I have been harping on that. We are so fixated with developing international linkages, but we are so allergic in developing linkages among Philippine universities. It's something that I have never understood. It is something that I have told the universities. It is something that it is a fact that it has not happened in the past 3 years that I'm in the commission. I've always said, you want to force linkages among universities, the commission will fund it, but there are no takers. So I hope that universities will equally look at the available linkages within the country rather than just link with other universities abroad but fail to maximize the expertise within the Philippines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Tulin, I've been calling you. Yes, please.
I fully agree, and I really support the suggestions of Chair Popoy. In fact, when I had a meeting yesterday with our region, we actually talked about already about the consortium of the 10 universities, state universities in Region 8. And we even talked about pulling our students, depending who is expert in what particular field. And I also like the idea that when we build program or courses, or when the courses are offered, especially courses in the life science, chemistry, biology, which requires laboratory, I think it's also very important to consider that if you have it online, you may not be able to deliver them exactly as what is required in the curriculum. So what I suggest actually in the meeting we had yesterday, in fact, I think this is being adopted by other universities abroad, is if the laboratories can be made or can be conducted separately from the lectures, which can be done online. What I mean is we will offer them separately. The lectures can be offered separately from the laboratories, and then we allow the students to come to the school or to the university only for laboratory courses in support of the lecture. So we might be able to grade them separately depending on how we structure the curriculum. I think that's a very good also alternative in offering these courses, because I know that for chemistry, for biology, and other hard sciences, you really have to have the actual laboratory experience in order to learn or gain the skills. I agree it cannot be learned fully online, but you really have to have those skills. But the best thing is if you can do the lecture online, if this COVID threat or any other emerging infectious diseases will come out in the future, we will try to avoid or minimize exposure of students in campus, or shorten their exposure in campus, for example. We are very lucky that we are in Region 8, we are in Leyte. It's probably best that we are situated in islands and our COVID cases are not that many. So we can actually implement our own curriculum localized, meaning customized. So that's true. You don't need actually to be, policies in other cities like Metro Manila or Cebu that are applying for total lockdown or community quarantine doesn't necessarily need to be applied also in Leyte, for example, in our case. But then again, we should all be careful. I just would like to share also our experience now with our graduate students, if you may, Dindong. For example, due to the lockdown, one of our main challenges is actually the failed thesis work, especially those theses requiring laboratories. Due to the lockdown, our analytical laboratories were also shut down, were closed. So our graduate students had in fact a very big problem because they cannot complete their analysis. So what we do to circumvent or to assist our graduate students is actually to let our research assistants in the lab assist our students so that they will still be able to avail of or do their respective chemical or analytical analysis in the laboratory. And then they will be able to also to satisfy the objectives of their experiment. So this is a kind of arrangement that we are doing in order for our graduate students And even if there is curfew here in the university for students, we exclude our graduate students from this curfew. I asked the permission from our mayor because what was actually included in the LGU memorandum order was only for tertiary students. The graduate students, fortunately, are not included in the curfew. So with good precautionary measures, we allow them to go to the laboratories, do their analysis. And in fact, some of them are planting crops and they have to be watered. The data have to be taken from the field. So it's really necessary that they have to come back one at a time in the campus to do the gathering of data, collection of data, and other analysis in the laboratory. So this is the kind of help we are assisting to our graduate students. And so in terms of connectivity, basically most of our graduate students here in the university are, well, they are able to adapt because they have internet connection. However, the problem is only when they go home because many of them are going to areas with no internet connection. So once they are inside the campus, they can still avail of our connectivity, but the fact that they went out or they went home after the lockdown or during the lockdown, some of them were not able to. So this is the challenge that we are facing now. And hopefully, this is also the challenge that really need solutions in order for them to complete the requirements and able to graduate. So basically, the idea of online or flexible learning is accepted in the university. In fact, I'm doing all the necessary preparations to the faculty, assigning them instructional materials that we are teaching. Probably not much problem if they are not major courses. For major courses, we have to think that the disciplines, the specialists, the experts should make all these IMs. And we are also planning in the region to really pool our resources in terms of sharing our IMs, develop online ready IMs, and pool students, offer them online with one instructor and many students at one time. So this is the kind of planning and planning that we are doing in the region at the moment. So thank you, Dong, and thank you also, Mr.
Sir, I think one big difference about graduate education and undergraduate education in the country is the fact that our undergraduates are especially in state universities, wala po silang binabayaran na tuition. Free tuition po sila. Pero sa graduate education ay substantial. Marami ang nagbabayad sa kanila and therefore hindi nila masyadong mamamaximize yung benefit ng pagbayad ng tuition, no? So yung isang malaking challenge na, for instance, what if our graduate students will clamor for tuition refund, ano, mga lab fees, na kasi sasabihin ng mga graduate students ay makikirefund kami ng lab fees kasi hindi naman namin nagamit yung mga lab fees. So malaking challenge ito sa mga state universities. Well, for example, sa mga private universities, siguro madali yan kasi syempre hindi masyadong wala kayong COA, no? Pero sa amin ng mga state universities, to facilitate the refund might be a big challenge, no? We have some questions here. I think the chair has already answered. For instance, the Associate Dean of Ateneo de Manila is raising a question about to be compassionate about our CHED scholars. Nasagot na ito ni Mr. Chair na dapat compassionate tayo ngayong mga panahong ito. I think malaking bagay ito na extend ng commission. And also, there's another question from USA, the Stride. Kung relevant pa ba ang graduate education? Especially when, for instance, ILO has projected a recession next year. So ito yung isa sa mga reaction. Siguro we can have the thoughts of our chair, the relevance of graduate education, especially in this time of recessions. Sir.
Well, it will always be relevant because graduate education is professional education. It is improving your credentials.
Mhm.
Despite all the questions that credentials will not matter over the long term, most professionals still look at graduate credentials as necessary for their professional growth.
Mhm.
The fact that we're in a pandemic, you know, the structure of thinking of a lot of people are changing out of fear and out of you know, the worry that things will be fundamentally changed in the next few months. Yet, yes, it will change, but it will not change to the extent that the whole concept of learning and credentialing will disappear. I don't think it's going to happen within the next couple of years. Maybe it will be affected in terms of how would you call that? Of the impact of your credentials in your professional growth because of the projected economic slowdown. But graduate school is an investment in the future. It's not an investment that you expect the returns to be in the next semester or in the next year. You develop graduate education because it is an investment in your whole professional life. So I don't think it will simply diminish and it will have no value because the returns on your investment in graduate education is not measured in the next 1 or 2 years. It is measured as you grow professionally and as you change from one type of activity to the other. So I don't think over the long term it will lose value.
Sir, let me just backtrack a little because Dr. Penaso is here. I think isang model nila yung consortium. Dr. Penaso, in the PhD programs, in the graduate programs, this time siguro mas operationalized na ito.
Yes. Actually, we have a plan, part of our complementation program here in Caraga region, that we, for universities and colleges, will offer a joint degree program in agriculture because the region needs so much expertise in agriculture, and we don't have any offering at the PhD level for agriculture, both for crops and the livestock or animal science. So we tried and we made a proposal, and it was evaluated by the OPSD of CHED. They came here together with Dr. Adalia. She was chair, no? And she came here with the team, and the regional ARCWA team also came over to Caraga. I even escorted all of them in all campuses here that offer agriculture, but unfortunately, based on their evaluation, out of the 4 SUCs, only 2 SUCs are really ready for this PhD program. And that's why we sort of parked the idea because we really want to model the idea of complementation among the 4. If 2 will be left out, then it will really defeat our purpose because we want to showcase some kind of resource sharing, pooling of resources, so that we can put up this joint program and find out whether it's going to be effective and it's really whether it's going to really address the expertise needs of the region. So pinark namin kasi simply the requirements for requirements set by CHED based on standards very high. All of these facilities, all of these library materials. So pinark namin, but I think we can revive the idea, and maybe this time the other SUCs that are not so ready can catch up. So this is a good time also to think about having this joint program here in the region.
Yeah, Din Dong, I think everyone knows that one of the things that I have championed in the commission is to restructure the technical panels. And we are doing that now. So maybe one of the things that I will take seriously when we restructure the technical panels is really get experts that are not just experts in their discipline, but experts who are open to flexible learning. maybe that is one of the new criteria items that I will use in determining who will be appointed to the technical panels. Because I do agree with what Professor Glenn earlier said. One of the biggest obstacles to flexible learning may be faculty members who are so set in the way they teach graduate school that they see technology as a threat, or they are afraid of technology, and therefore will not be welcoming flexible learning. I think that is a significant obstacle, no? Especially for faculty members who are steeped in their disciplinary expertise and have their level of comfort with residential laboratory type are very difficult to overcome. I think we'll have to find ways of getting experts who are open on flexible learning and also experts in their discipline who will go to the technical panel so they can assess and evaluate joint programs differently. I think that is one of the things that I'm looking at the list of the proposed technical panels now, and maybe that is an additional criteria item that I will put in determining who will be appointed by the commission. Because we cannot look at, you know, the usual way we do it anymore. No, like for example, the technical panel on agriculture says if you open an agricultural program, you must have X hectares of land that the students can use. You know, that's you know, for want of a better term, you know, there are other ways of developing agriculture without the need for 50 hectares or 10 hectares of land, you know. So if we're stuck still with that old mode, we will not be able to maximize, you know, flexible learning.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have a few minutes to wind up our webinar, but I believe we have discussed most of the critical points or key points that we wish to understand in this webinar, and that is the challenge of COVID-19 in the offering of our graduate program. And I think we're very fortunate that the chair has given us some kind of framework in how to operationalize our post-COVID plans and programs for our graduate education. So bago po tayo sir magtapos, marami pong salamat. I think we have a very large number of participants who have joined us this afternoon. From the academe, from various members of state universities and colleges, private schools, graduate schools, including other private organizations like USAID Stride, from ERI, from DepEd, and other national institutions. So I think we can, in the next minutes before we wind up, sir, can you give us some kind of assurance that in this post-COVID scenario, post-COVID era, we can say that graduate education, with its goal to really come up with quality programs and quality students, will be fine in this post-COVID COVID time, sir?
Before I go into that assurance, I think one good thing that the COVID pandemic has created is a space for people to exchange ideas. I have been very productive this past few days. In fact, yesterday, while holding a Zoom session with more than 100 presidents of state universities and colleges, I was able to insert 3 interviews, 2 on radio and 1 on TV, and posted it online on various topics. So technology allows me now to multitask and reach out, which was impossible before, because everyone everyone's day-to-day life is structured around their office. Now that we have this opportunity to link electronically, I think this is a good outcome of the COVID pandemic. People are all on Zoom and continue to be productive while waiting for the quarantine to end. First, no, I think this should continue. I think this should continue. Even if quarantine is lifted, even if we go to a new normal, I think these Zoom meetings will be a new normal, and that is a good sign. I'm able to reach more people simultaneously at the same time. I can switch from one Zoom meeting to the other. Like yesterday, I asked one of the commissioners to chair the meeting while I do my interviews. Second, I think the fact that technology is available makes the acceptance of ideas a little easier during this time. Because we don't have a choice. Because both the fear of the pandemic as well as the fact that we need to adjust fast, I think it shakes the mindset of a lot of academics. And remember, academics are always usually the most difficult to change mindset-wise. No, because the academics are steeped in the tradition of knowing what needs to be done. And to challenge them, to tell them to think differently, I think is a good outcome of this pandemic. Because now I am seeing people who are out of their comfort zone, who are accepting new ideas, who are at least agreeing to debate, or at least agreeing to listen. Because before, one of my frustrations in the commission is I don't get to talk to the presidents as often as I want. We don't have sessions where we can exchange ideas. Now everybody is forced to do it because there's no other option and nothing else to do for the day but do Zoom sessions. So I think this is a very positive outcome. We get to talk, we get to exchange ideas, we open minds. No? I think the challenge now is how do we move from just agreeing on the new normal and agreeing to the challenges to creating actual systems that work. So for example, I would request that in the next Zoom meeting, President Penaso be allowed to present how does the consortium on graduate education in the Caraga look like? So that we can now look at experiences, or maybe ask Professor Glenn to show and demonstrate to us how they are doing open distance learning in De La Salle University. I think everyone now, all the university presidents, the leaders of higher education, must see actual things that work. Because now that the mind is now open, now that there is agreement on the new normal, now that there is openness to flexible learning, we now have to look at things that work, show it, and then start saying, how can you be part of it? How can you start it on your own? That is what I have been asking these past few days. Have Zoom sessions where the experts can tell you how it is done. Because we don't know what is happening on the ground. So may I ask that in the next sessions, we get specific examples of how flexible learning is being done in the top universities, so that the others can further, think of how they can do it. I thought my Zoom session with university presidents, where we talked about flexible learning, was very instructive. It's instructive because at least people are saying, yes, this is something that can be done. But I am also a little bit, I wouldn't say frustrated. I am a little bit concerned that in that discussion of flexible learning, everyone was so overwhelmed about the problem of connectivity. Yes, connectivity is a problem, but the issue of connectivity is part of the new normal. We cannot demand and say connectivity must be perfect before we shift to flexible learning. Because if we think that way, if we think sequentially that step 3 must happen after step 2, that step 2 cannot happen without step 1, if we're still wired that way, we will not be able to be nimble and innovative. So poor connectivity, while we are addressing it, is not a precondition to flexible learning. It is part of the new normal that we must be nimble on how we navigate it. It should be a given for some parts of the country. That's why you realign your flexible learning by classifying students in terms of connectivity and say, for these students, this is what we do. For this type of students, this is what we do. I think a lot of people are overwhelmed by the obstacles. I always say the opportunities rather than the obstacle should be the one to be identified. Because, for example, if we can show universities that are able to navigate even with poor connectivity, let's let them present in a Zoom session. And they tell us how it can be done. And if it is done, then the others may start thinking of how they do it. So I think that is the next step for universities. Get things that work, show it to the other universities, and the commission is open for these initiatives and will throw its support behind it. That is the only way by which I can assure that graduate education will not only come out better in the post-COVID area, it will not only survive, it should be better after the post-COVID area, post-COVID period. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the things that you have said about post-COVID graduate education scenarios. For instance, that with all these disruptions, with all these game-changing challenges on graduate education, instead of us being disrupted, no, nung mga disruptions nito, dapat tayo yung mag-disrupt. Tayo yung magpakita ng disruptions that will enable graduate education to work for the better. May I ask Dr. Penaso, Dr. Tulin, Dr. Shirley Agrupis to share their last thoughts before I call Dr. Rabajante and Dr. Alea and Dr. Vergara if they're still around. Dr. Penaso, please, nag-post ng challenge sa'yo si Chair.
Yeah, with our discussion, I still agree that adapting to the new normal brought about by the COVID-19 disruptions is the most challenging task for school administrators like us, even our faculty and our students. True enough, we are living in a VUCA world, a world characterized by volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. All of us, students, faculty, and administrators, have to deal with 101 things that are now different in our lives. Our comfort zones, like the traditional way of teaching, are seemingly inexistent, and our traditional ways of doing things are increasingly not feasible. So we need to cope, adjust, or adapt to change. Any adaptation for that matter amidst crisis is challenging and stressful. But despite the challenge and stress, we need to see the silver lining, and we need to see that we can discover the bright opportunity amidst this gloomy adversity. As we all know, the word crisis, if we have the Chinese equivalent, the Ouija, it comes from it has two characters, and one of the characters would mean crisis or adversity, while the other one opportunity. It was echoed by Chair Popoy over and over again that we have to look at the opportunity, not looking at the adversities, all these impediments to, embracing the new normal. So any adaptation for that matter amidst crisis is challenging and stressful. As Charles Darwin puts it, in the struggle for survival, the fittest win out at the expenses of their rivals because they succeed in adapting themselves best to their environment. For survivability, excellence, and competitive advantage of our graduate programs, we need to continuously and adequately respond to the new and emerging realities. Our graduate programs and policies, including their delivery, must be relevant and responsive to and fit with the demands of the time. The new normal is flexible learning systems, hybrid and blended platforms, online and offline, synchronous and asynchronous. going to be challenging and stressful because many are caught empty-handed. Many of our faculty members are not prepared for this new normal. Many are not familiar and are struggling with these flexible learning systems, especially online and distance education. Nevertheless, with the program, the proposal of JED for massive capacity building of the faculty, and even our own institutional initiatives by trying to tap our local experts on online education, they can actually share their knowledge and skills to our faculty within our institution. So lastly, as what the Bible is saying, and I would like to affirm the statement of Chair Popoy, that no one puts a new wine in old wineskins. Otherwise, the wine will burst the skins, and the wine is lost on the skins as well. So a new wine requires a new wineskin. Thus, the new normal requires new mindsets, new paradigms, new frameworks, new approaches, and new ways of doing things. And this is called consistency, this is called alignment, and this is fitness. So if we are fit, then we can survive. So we need to change the mindsets of all, even especially our educational leaders at the top, our faculty, and even our students. Thank you very much.
Dr. Penaso, the chair is expecting you about the formation of your consortium in the next meeting. Thank you very much, Dr. Penaso. President Tulin, your last words, please, briefly.
I will be brief, but anyway, in closing, I agree that given the experience that we are facing, graduate education really should be able to adapt to what is available at hand. I still believe and strongly believe that graduate education is relevant. Remember, graduate education is the core of the university. And the university's people, the graduate faculty, are the generators of new knowledge. Based on the experience, based on the inventions, discoveries, we find that the graduate faculty, graduate researchers are actually the one who have the most, or they have the number of times in all this, So I fully assure you that the BSU will adapt to the flexible learning strategy. And what I would like, if I may suggest, perhaps CHED and the TWG should consider maybe assessment tools in this flexible learning strategy, so that this will perhaps help us uphold the quality of graduate education in the country. So I think that's very important, even if we are able to produce graduate materials, IMs, but we have to monitor and we have to know, we have to assess how these are being, although we have the academic freedom to do so, but I believe quality still is very important in graduate education. That's, thank you so much, Dingdong, for inviting me and to Chair Popoy for this opportunity. Maraming salamat.
Maraming pong salamat. Dr. Alea, Dean Alea are still there. Your last thoughts, briefly, please, before we end this session. Dr. Alea.
Yes, sir, Doc.
Yes, please.
I only have a very short message. I think it's about time we have to embrace this new reality and move forward. Let us all provide a learner-centered education, and let us make online learning work. That's all, Sir Dong.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we still have Dr. Agrupis around? Dr. Agrupis,
Yes,
President Agrupis. Yes, please, your last words, please. Yes.
Yeah, nasabi ko na yung message ko kanina, but it's really, through this pandemic, it's time now to really open our heart and our mind to really embrace these challenges. Moving forward for MMSU, we will continue to provide trainings and learning opportunities to faculty to deliver flexible instruction through webinars. And we are up to really implementing our developed application, which is the model distinctive for MMSU. We have a in-house developed application. We call it the MMSU Virtual Learning Environment. That even before the outbreak of this COVID-19 pandemic, we have been practicing this. Only few faculty ang gumagawa niyan and uploaded their courses in this system. So with this pandemic now, we are now making it a must to all our faculty, and we are ready to capacitate our brothers and sisters within the region, not at the national level. Thank you very much. So we will all make it.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Agrupis. Do we still have Dr. Vergara? I think he has a next meeting to attend to. Otherwise, we'll call,
Yeah.
yes,
Hi, Dom.
John Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, thank you for inviting me. I joined the others in the call for being nimble, agile, and flexible. But I'll also add that, of course, we should continue to be compassionate and caring for our students, because they are our customers here. I thank the CHED for enabling us, for promising support, and in particular helping us with, I guess, disrupting constructively education here in the country, and particularly for graduate education. Thank you again.
Thank you, John Paul. And we have Jomar Rabajante. Jomar, you're still there with us? Jomar?
Yes po.
Yeah, Jomar, yes, please. With all the things that you have done about the modeling. Yeah, your last words.
Yeah, for the statistics and mathematicians, even though we're really very stressed now, and we're being burdened with many work, we still promise to continue tracking the situations of COVID-19, and we hope that we can help in the decision making real time as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Ms. Madam President.
Thank you and congratulate you for this very timely initiative. Thank you very much for calling us and enlighten us more. Thank you, Dong. Mabuhay ka.
Thank you. Yes, thank you very much to our SUC presidents and leaders of the private universities, including Jomar, and most especially to Chairman Popoy. He was the one who inspired us in making this undertaking because, kay may COVID o wala, ang lagi niyang sinasabi ay dapat ang graduate education should be relevant. And all the more that we should be relevant because the skills, the knowledge that this country would need would be generated out of the advanced knowledge, the research the new knowledge that graduate education is able to create. So marami pong salamat. In the next series of graduate education webinar, we still need to tackle international students, the issues and problems. May mga problema po kami dyan, but we need to come up with solutions. So we'll have institutions that would really cater to international students and other issues and challenges in the offering of our graduate education. So marami pong salamat, Chairman Popoy. And to all our webinar participants, thank you very much and watch out for the next webinar. Marami pong salamat, sir, sa inyo pong lahat.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Dom.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.